I'm pleased to now introduce our second presenter for this session on overcoming access barriers. And our second presenter today is Richard Scenna from YourLink. And Richard will be speaking about overcoming the barriers to create life-changing opportunities for carers through digital skills. And then Richard will also be addressing questions directly after his presentation. So please put your questions for Richard in the chat as he presents, and he'll come to those towards the end. Thank you, Richard.
Great. Great. Thanks, Sarah. I'd like to begin by also acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we all meet today, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm really looking forward to telling you about why digital skills can be life-changing for carers and telling you about the program we've been working with Carers New South Wales for this. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about YourLink. We are an organisation dedicated to the digital inclusion of seniors, carers and care workers. We put devices in the hands of seniors and carers and teach them how to use them so that they can be more independent, access services and connect with their family, friends and those local supports. We do this by co-designing digital programs with organisations like Carers New South Wales and aged care providers. And we also provide digital coaches to support with the ongoing learning so that there's that activity and participation in the digital world. Over the last 5 years, we've trained over 3,000 people and we have so many positive stories about how we've made an impact with this. Next slide, please. One example last year, actually at the height of lockdowns in Victoria, was working with a Victorian home care provider called VMCH, where we actually provided the devices and helped the clients as well as the care workers upskill with the digital skills and services, as well as getting the devices in a way that suited them. And we got to meet the lovely Antoinetta, and her daughter told us about how the iPad really made a massive difference for Antoinetta in terms of connection to family and friends and music. Next slide, please. So digital has never been so important. I think it's safe to say on the back of the last year, we've all seen the impact of what digital skills and digital access has really had on all of us. When we think about this, we're thinking that there's three main factors that influence a person's ability to cross that digital divide if there's a gap. Ability, affordability, and access. And we tend to focus more on the ability side of things in terms of skills. Just before COVID and restrictions, we did some research amongst seniors, and only 18% of them were using video calls compared to using 98% of them using phone calls as the means for communication. And they heavily relied on their family and friends for technology support, with over 75% doing that. So this was just before the lockdowns. So even during the lockdowns and restrictions, when we asked our audience about what services they were feeling excluded from, the top three was government services with 78%, 72% finance and banking, and even the really important public safety and health and information like that, 66% were saying they were feeling excluded from that. And then more recently, there's some great research out with Good Things Foundation and Digital Nation Australia, where they do a lot of great insight there, and it's talking about how 84% of Australian internet users have used telehealth for the first time during COVID-19. But a lot of that is also using phone as the primary means for that telehealth. So when we think about that for carers, there's quite a significant impact for them. Next slide. In terms of the context, not everybody has the digital skills they need. There's assumptions being made that people have those skills and were able to participate in their own way. And again, that same report talks about 40% are feeling less confident, less than 40% are feeling confident that they can keep up with tech. And I'm sure many of us can reflect on that and even struggle ourselves with keeping up with the technology changes. And safety and security has been a really important thing that's that people are concerned about, with 1 in 2 being concerned about their online safety. Next slide, please. The last data set here, just in terms of what's happened with digital, if we think about it, this data talks about 1% of Australians are actually completely offline now, whereas it's down from 10%. People have been forced to go online. Even in terms of consuming data, there's been 10 years of growth in the data consumption brought forward by what we've all experienced in the last 18 months. Children are now learning online, telehealth, we're communicating online, etc., like that. So all this paints a picture of how important digital is and how we need to start making sure that we support the carers around us and seniors and everybody in the community. Next slide, please. So from our perspective, when we think about things, we're thinking about one of the barriers, and the main barrier is around confidence. Um, Confidence around using technology is one of the biggest barriers. People start from a place of fear or apprehension. And we have this kind of diagram where if we all take a pause and think about it, we're all on a different path with our learner journey with digital skills. Even in certain platforms, we may still be really unsure about how to use something, even if we're quite tech savvy, but we then get to a point of being inspired to use it. So we like to look at this as everybody is on their own journey, their own individual pathway, and we want to move them from feeling nervous and excited, feeling nervous but building their excitement, to feeling more confident about the basics, which is really important. You know, building the confidence is really important so that we're then sparking the curiosity so that people are trying new things and inspiring them about what is possible, and ultimately, it's about participation in their own way. In whatever an individual's own way is, we want participation and independence. Next slide, please. So with Carers New South Wales, we worked on a digital program, a Carers Connect program. And working with the team, we identified what we wanted progress to look like. What we're going to measure the statements. What do we want the people to kind of say at the end of the program? A lot of people start from, I feel isolated. Some people were saying they feel isolated, disconnected, or something similar. So what we wanted out of that was that they feel more connected, more connection. Confidence with, I'm not sure what's available, where to go, particularly with carer support services and things like that. I feel more confident about accessing services and building that confidence in connecting to that. A common statement we hear is, I don't know how to use an iPad or device, whatever it is, just a hard kind of stop. Whereas what we want to do is get them to a point of, I've been using it since the training, I've been using it in my own way. Fear is an obvious one. People say, I'm scared I'm going to break it, I'm going to do something wrong, particularly with the older carers that we've worked with. What we want them to do is, I've tried something new. They spark that curiosity. I'm using an app I didn't use before. I'm using something I didn't use before. Next slide, please. But in order to bring this to life, we have to work closely with our clients to look at all the parts, that bring a digital program to life for the Carers New South Wales context or our clients' context. It is not just about getting devices in the hands of individuals. In fact, if it was, we would have all solved this problem by now. So what we do is we look at all the various levers. We look at the design. We looked at the logistics. How are we going to get the devices? How are we going to get them on board? What assets do they need? How are we going to then, from a marketing communication, what are we going to communicate to them so that they know it's the right people, and attracting the right kind of personalities and learning online? Setting up the devices and what that experience is for a handover of a device, getting that device in the individual's hands. And what we do is also, there's a welcome initial Zoom session, because we had to deliver in an online environment based on Zoom. And so obviously that's a core skill we had to embed in it. We have tea and technology sessions, which are our online training sessions, which is the actual learning sessions around content. And this is broken down into 3 one-hour sessions, learning about the basics, learning about communicating, learning about apps, and is shared group social learning together, where carers come together in an online environment of up to about 10 people, see each other, but also learn together. and are learning something together. That social learning component is really important and something that you'll see in the stories shortly. Support during the program is really important, and then obviously we want to springboard them into the Carers New South Wales programs or whatever carer programs there are. Next slide, please. So delivering a project in a challenging backdrop like now, we had to kind of consider some of these things. Lockdown has meant access to carers has been disrupted with handing over iPads. We had to think differently about how could we get iPads in their hands. We had access and then we didn't, that sort of thing. Obviously, there's significant impact on carers themselves in terms of the support and having flexibility with what is possible and scheduling the sessions. We needed to ensure everyone had the basic Zoom sessions and how skills and how we could support that. And we had to create a really supportive group learning environment, but it had to stay focused on the digital skills because we're obviously our role is about digital programs. It wasn't about all the other great carer programs that all these other organizations and you provide. Next slide, please. So we have some incredibly great stories of hope and examples of what's happened. So this program has run all this year, and continues. And we've had some great examples where, so this carer here hadn't used an iPad before. They've used their phone. They've had their phone for mainly calls, but not a smart device. They wanted to learn anything and everything about the iPad. And that's a really common statement we hear. Often people will say, I don't know what I don't know. I don't want to know what I need to learn. I just want to learn it all. After they've done the training and they've had the support and they've been part of a program, this individual is now doing everything on the iPad. As they said, anything I do, I tell them to send me an email. They've learnt a lot since the training and they're much more inquisitive about the things to check out. We've sparked that curiosity that we wanted. They're feeling much more confident. They're never off the iPad and they've kind of said that they, if they're not sure of doing something now, they don't wait for someone else to do it, particularly at a time when family and friends have maybe not been available. That we've supported them with their independence. Again, another theme that we're hearing through the carer stories. And they've had that regular contact through video now, through FaceTime or Zoom as well. And Mary Jane mentioned about online sessions and, you'll hear that as a general theme, but the assumption is that people know how to use Zooms or whatever the platforms are. We're opening that up for them. Next slide, please. In another example, this person started off from they're caring for their husband and they wanted to learn more about technology. They've got the basic use of computers, but they wanted to learn more about Zoom and join Zooms. So through the training, this individual was able to access the support through the iPad for specific dementia group support and looking up the support from Google as well and being able to find that access for a particular caring scenario. Mary Jane also mentioned, and we've heard, about respite, and this, the carers are having opportunities to enjoy things personally, to take control of their time, take pictures of cooking, things like that, enjoying that kind of respite away from the caring situation. And what I love actually is this example of podcasts as a content and a shared experience as well. We've heard countless examples of this where podcasts has been a great content to like a carer and the person they're caring for to enjoy the experience, but still get on with things that potentially they need to do during the morning or the day. But also it springboards into a shared communication and conversation and breaks up the day. So podcast is one of the big takeaways, I'd say. Podcasts are a great kind of piece of content that everyone should be looking at. Next slide, please. The third one is just around, obviously you'll see a similar theme, basic skills. They weren't feeling confident about it. They had basic skills with emails, they didn't have a lot of confidence with emails, but they were feeling quite isolated. And this is a common theme. So the outcome after the training, they had grown in confidence with communicating with family and friends, FaceTime and video calls and audio calls. They were feeling more confident and not scared about things. and trying new things and experimenting with new things to build that confidence. They were definitely feeling both more connected and also more independent, so they could try things on their own. And I love this quote that kind of talks about the iPad was this black box that I was petrified of, and now it's becoming my friend. I mean, the devices are an enabler for someone's participation in the community around them. Next slide, please. The final story of hope is one that is again around a caring situation, but for someone who was caring for someone with a stroke. And again, they were feeling quite isolated, but they had some good basic digital skills, but they were really hoping to connect online with other groups and other carers of similar caring scenarios. They have felt like they have a lot more support now as a result of the program. And they didn't realize how much they could actually use the technology to socialize, not just from a practical perspective, but it was also from a social connection perspective. It was incredibly life-changing for them being able to meet other carers online via Zoom and online platforms. And as they said, they've been waiting for years for something like this to happen, and it was a real emotional experience for them. And it's something that they felt was rewarding for themselves, for their own. It was time out for themselves in a way, as they say. Next slide, please. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of those examples, and we've got lots of those stories. But one of the things I suppose we want to bear in mind now is as we open up, as we kind of go back to what we were doing before, there's a risk we're going to lose some of this digital connection and some of these digital access for carers and for the community members that it's making an impact for. Essentially now, if we think about the future, it's a blended kind of life. It's a blended future. In a workplace, there's a lot of talk about the hybrid, whether it's online, in an office, that sort of thing. A blended life from our perspective is really that you get the experiences of in-person as well as online. It's not about an or. It's not, I can only do this or I can only do this. It should be an and. I can have the option to do this or I can participate in this other way, do the face-to-face as well as the online digital experiences and be part of that. Next slide, please. So the last thing here is just in terms of some examples. I think, you've seen all these kind of things in terms of online networking, respite experiences, and just the practical examples that we're seeing from people around how devices and technology, digital skills, how that can make a real difference for carers with paper submissions, documentation, that sort of thing. This is just a snapshot. There really is a heap of examples that I think all of us can place. Next slide, please. Okay. And finally, if there's any care providers, we would love, digital inclusion is definitely essential for everyone. We'd love to co-design this with any organisations that are out there. Thank you. That wraps up the formal part of the program.
Thank you, Richard.